Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com with this week's episode of the Market Monday. This week I want to talk about the reserve list. Dun dun dun. Yep, the dreaded reserve list topic. I have not a clue how much longer this reserve list can happen if Wizards is going to flip-flop on this decision, because the price is now encroaching on a lot of cards that are Commander staples becoming unattainable. Cards like Academy Rector are now over $100 that are very heavily played in Commander. Earthcraft, another Commander staple, is approaching the $100 mark. And just many, many more of these even more obscure Commander cards have hit double-digit price tags, and I think there's a little justification with Legacy being kind of a good old boys club with expensive cards and people that have the cards already. It's kind of a throwback to people that started collecting a long time ago, and so I can see Wizards saving the reserve list for that particular format. But now that it's affecting their most played casual format, I'm thinking that the times are going to have to change. The tone is going to have to change about the reserve list. But without my personal opinions about why we should abolish the reserve list, particularly I would have a suggestion. I would put things in categories like Category 1, Category 2, Category 3. Have Category 1s only be able to be printed at 5% of their known quantities per year is all you could reprint them. So they wouldn't be able to be included in a standard set or even a box set. They'd have to be a special promo or a special award for like a pro tour. So if they wanted to get the Black Lotus reprinted, it'd have to be for a very special event, and not more than like 5% of the total quantity could be printed within like a calendar year, or possibly they could even go up by that. Category 2s would be cards that could be printed in sealed product, but not box sets like master sets. And so we're talking like from the vaults, how they used to have with their reserve list, where they used to get around the reserve list by having foil printings because it didn't exist as a alternate art, for example, or a judge foil. And those would be eligible for Category 2s. Again, there'd have to be some sort of rule that it can only be reprinted every 5 years, and then quantities could be somewhat limited, like not more than 15 or 10% of known quantities. And I think that would help the investors with, or just the collectors, have a little bit of peace of mind that their collection won't just dwindle in value. However, people can have access to those products. It would help Wizards actually sell those particular sets. And speaking of Category 1s, it would help actually get those tournaments. So they could have a massive tournament that you could qualify for, or like an arena promo that was sent out to the person that actually won the first arena tournament. Something like that I think they could do with the reserve list, and it wouldn't really affect prices too much, but would stop this nonsense from happening that we're seeing right now. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then last but not least, I'd make a Category 3. These are cards that aren't really that significant in Legacy, but do see some Commander play, for example, or do see that Wizard just wants to keep from going up to those insane values just because they are reserve list cards. So these could be included in master sets, but not in like a standard set. And again, they'd have to control quantities based upon whatever number that they deem fit for that. They would keep the price steady, would not go crazy expensive, but would still allow people to obtain them at a fairly decent price without, completely breaking the wallet. So here's the reserve list. Reserve list at the start of Dominaria, if you owned one of every copy, was $47,972. It is increased all the way to $10,000 to $57,000, almost $58,000, and that is a lot steeper of a gain than we've seen in the past few sets. I mean, we had a nice little reserve list spike from the Hour of Devastation to Ixalan, for example, but that was only about a $5,000 increase. We had an increase from Ixalan to Rivals of Ixalan, just slightly actually, about a couple $1,000s here, but then right from Rivals of Ixalan all the way to Dominaria now is even a more massive jump. Depending on where you start, that's a $20,000 increase. So what I've been talking about, yeah, we've had a lot of increase from, looks like MTG Goldfish isn't working right now for the weekly prices. Sometimes the data gets messed up. But what I've noticed is a lot of cards that I purchased not too long ago, I'm thinking about this area for some Commander decks, have any card that on the reserve list about $20 to $30 has gone up to the $70 to the $100 range. So these are the cards like the Academy Rectors, cards like Wheel of Fortune has spiked up like crazy. We have cards like not Natural Selection, Survival of the Fittest. Let's look at the price trajectory. So Survival of the Fittest, for example, has just spiked like crazy. Again, this was your typical $40, $30 card for a long period of time, and this has just gone nuts. We have Vorax Stronghold, another card I own just for Commander deck that has just shot up in value. In fact, it was even more a couple days ago, but I was picking these up for $20 for various Commander decks, and they're up to $75. And these are cards that really, really do affect the format. Then you can even look at, so it used to be that the reserve list cards, the cards that were worth value were mostly cards from, I would say, Legends and before. Some dark cards could hit that price, but it was really the old stuff that had very, very small print runs. So everything up to revised. So dark, the problem with dark is dark just had some pretty bad cards in the entire set. But Legends had a very, very small print run, and these were rare even when I was a kid. So I started in 95. I started with revised. In fact, I like to tell the story of the very first booster pack I opened. I opened up a Tundra, and I was pissed off because my friend opened up this cool pirate, the Veteran Bodyguard, and all I got was a land. And who wanted a land is their rare? Just how naive I was as a kid. So Revised was everywhere when I started. Revised was nothing special. In fact, you could continue to get Revised packs clear up. I was able to get even duels for around $10 a piece. I remember clear back when even Onslaught was out. There was nothing special to Revised, but Legends, the Dark, Antiquities, Arabian Nights, Alpha Beta Unlimited, they were already extremely rare and hard to find sealed product of it. The investors or just the collectors had already opened the vast majority of those particular cards. So that was the first wave of these reserve list cards. Is anything from the Dark before the Dark had really, really high prices just because of the really minuscule quantities that are out there. But now we've seen this 2.0 reserve list with cards like Time Spiral, another really good Commander card. Is that Time Spiral's not banned Commander, is it? I can't remember if that one is or not. But Time Spiral, it's just take an extra turn to untap 6. So untap 6 lands. No. This one is that's not it. Take an extra turn. So remove Time Spiral from the game. Each player shuffles their graveyard in hand into his library, then draw 7 cards, and you untap 6 lands. That's correct. Yep. Time Spiral has gone up a ton in the past little bit. So again, this is another card that had that nice little increase, but has really spiked up from Dominaria. And then we've seen, of course, the Legacy staples just skyrocket in value post Dominaria, going up from, here's the Grim Monolith going up to about double from $70 to $140. And we even see cards that are as close as Stronghold, which that was a set that was really, really printed and didn't really have a lot of value in it back in the day. You could find Stronghold cards for anything. With the cards like the Mox Diamond going up from, had its double up clear back when it was in the Oath of Gatewatch, going up from 35 to 70, and then we had another double up from it looks like Hour Devastation to the Ixalan, and we've had even another double up from Ixalan to Dominaria, so it's getting crazy, crazy expensive with the reserve list. So anyway, I think that Wizards is they're going to be forced to address this. Again, it was not a big as issue when it was Legacy because there was already expensive cards. It was kind of an older, expensive format. It was a very competitive and cutthroat format, and it didn't really appeal to the masses. So again, it didn't affect the vast majority of Magic players. But when you are starting to affect, when a lot of these cards that you see on even above the $100 mark do go in a lot of Commander decks, or are very, very, like the Grim Monolith is a huge staple in if you really want to get into Commander, and Academy Rector is a very, very good Commander staple. I use it in basically any white deck. It's a throw-in usually to go get one of the good enchantments there's some massive combos with the Academy Rector as well. And I think that this is where we're going to start to see the moaning get to Wizards, And it just becomes very tempting for Wizards as well to reprint these cards as a bit of an equity. So I'd be very careful with the reserve list. I don't think there's a lot of money to be made. I've already made a ton of money with cards that I was just picking up. You also got to be careful. I don't know if you know, at this point, there have been some scams with the reserve list. There was a card called Meditation, I believe. Let's find it here. That was, or Meditate, that spiked up in value because people put a fake list of Legacy, made a Young Pyromancer, Grixis Young Pyromancer, and a Jeskai list. The Grixis won, I believe, and the Jeskai list took 4th in their fake tournament they had. Both of them running copies, one of them running 4 copies of Meditates. And of course, it spiked up from the $5 mark all the way up to $40. Now, this is a card that is borderline playable that could be broken. So when people are just looking over the list, they probably thought it was right, because drawing 4 cards for 3 mana, if you're ready to win on that turn, is of course game breaking if you can draw the 4 cards. So you can actually, swing in for lethal by drawing those 4 cards. So it's not too much of a stretch to see this play in a Legacy deck. However, it hasn't seen any play. It looks like it has seen a bit of play a while back in February in these take extra turn. No, they are just trying to win on that last turn, trying to figure out what this deck is trying to do. It's a high tide deck, so yeah, they're going to try to win on that turn. And this one actually doesn't look like it has Meditate. There's 1 in the sideboard is all. So anyway, you got to be aware of even scams with the reserve list of people just putting lists. I talked about putting Null Chamber in every one of a commander deck and just start spamming tapped out or spamming the place of the EDH rec. Look for information on commander, and then a lot of people go to net deck, commander decks, and they see, oh look, Null Chamber, Null Chamber, Null Chamber. And now that I own like 450 copies of Null Chamber, people start wanting them, and then of course it spikes the reserve list. So keep in mind that a lot of that has to do with the reserve list. It's like a very, very safe place for these investors because they think it cannot be reprinted, and therefore it will never go as drastically down as something like a reprint. So that's one of the things going for the reserve list. The other thing that's really going for the reserve list is we are starting to see a massive influx of new player base in Magic the Gathering, and there's no way around it right now. I've seen some pretty poor analysis on people saying that this is what happens when we don't have invocations in the set. This is like trying to find other reasons for Dominaria being worth so much money. Well, I don't think that if there was invocations in the set, I don't think that we'd see Karns for even any less. The problem is Dominaria is already at the point where it is worthwhile for people to just open up boxes after boxes, and in fact, it is sold out beyond sold out. All of the distributors are waiting for the second wave. They have been sold out of Dominaria. According to Wizards, it was the most attended pre-release of all time, as well as the highest amount that they have sent out to both distributors and stores for booster boxes after week 1. So I don't know if it has to do with that early letting the local game stores have the early pre-orders. I think that has a lot to do with it. So it kind of influxed the system or injected the system with more supply than would naturally be seen when they were computing week 1, because week 1 was actually the week after the pre-release has already occurred, so people had already got their pre-boxes. I'm just saying, if there was invocations in here, it wouldn't mess with the prices of these cards, because invocations usually tick up the value of a box and make more boxes opened based upon the demand of the invocations. But what I'm trying to say is the demand is already at peak. There can't be more. There has never been more demand out of this set than we have going right now. So even if there was invocations in, or masterpieces, whatever, in Dominaria, we'd still be looking at $65 cards, and we'd still see people cracking box after box after box. To prove this, the EV of Dominaria, the TC Mid Dominaria, is a whopping $105. And in fact, this is at kind of a lower point for the entire set of Dominaria. If you can see the price trajectory here, it was during its release, it was 120, 115, going strong in those, and this has been a very, very successful set for keeping its value. I was incredibly wrong with the demand of Dominaria. I thought people would find it as a cute little set, fun set, but cute set. Just open up, find the few legendary creatures they wanted for the commander, and I didn't think it'd really impact standard too much. And boy, was I wrong about that. It has breathed new life in standard. In fact, it's completely affected the entire price of the rest of the standard sets. You can see even Hour of Devastation going up in value since the Dominaria was released. Usually you only see this happen right after rotation. You see a big increase in the price of cards because there's a fresh new standard. However, Dominaria looks like it created a fresh new standard and led to a buying spree of cards from even older sets like Hour of Devastation. The same holds true with the Amonkhet. Amonkhet has gone up since the release of Dominaria. Ixalan has gone up since the release of Dominaria, which is just unheard of because this is the last set, so this one should be going down because it just had its critical mass of cards being entered into the system because of all the drafts that were and all the sealed that was played during that time period. And we even see Rivals of Ixalan, the last set before Dominaria, go up in value after Dominaria's release. So all of these put together just shows to me that Magic is in just an insane increase. It reminds me of Return to Ravnica, that a lot of people have just entered into the standard environment, but not just standard. We see this with Commander staples. We see this again with the reserve list. We see this with legacy cards. We see this with, you name it, even casual products, which I'll get to one in a second. And all of this just seems that Magic is either A, in this massive bubble, but these stats, if they are true, according to Wizards, it is a huge influx of either returning players or new players into the fold. So I'm expecting to see some record Grand Prix Vegas this year for attendance if this keeps up. Sales should stay stronger during the summer than they have been. And so basically all the information that used to hold true is irrelevant. This has never really happened with prices going up from the last two blocks when a new block is released. If we even go back to 8th Revolt, which should start crashing because this set is just everywhere, also the price went up since the release of Dominaria. And Kaladesh, I think Kaladesh is the one that has stayed steady and has pretty much flatlined out. But that should be expected from a set that was opened up this much. Kaladesh, I believe, holds the record, or it might be close to the record between Kaladesh and Khans Tarkir for the set that was opened the most. Now, if we see that these older sets too should be really crashing in value, like the Eldritch Moon. We've seen Eldritch Moon actually stabilize off because of the popularity of Modern and the amount of cards that are played in Modern. This is actually unheard of for a set that is just rotated to be able to keep almost a break even if you get boxes at slightly less at distributor price. Usually after they've rotated, you can actually find boxes for around the $60 mark for all the people trying to get out of old inventory and into new inventory. Shadows of Innistrad is still pretty low and still going down, but that has been expected. You have even Oath of the Gatewatch increasing in value. Battle for Zendikar is still pretty bad at $23, and the older sets too, we've seen a few of them start to tick up in price. Of course, Khans with the fetch lands and Fate Reforged, but this is an interesting little mark here. The Khans here, even with the fetch lands, is still a worse value than buying a Dominaria. I've never understood everyone's appeal to Khans here, other than the certain YouTube personalities pushing that it's all about the fetch, when I think that's the most that is a card. All the fetch lands are cards I wouldn't be caught dead holding multiples of. I'd only have the cards that I need in a deck because these cards are always on Wizards bullseye to try to reprint because of the value that it brings to a reprinted set. I think that Modern Masters 2017 is going to be the bread and butter of how they build their master sets in the future, and they are going to be crazy not to have sets of fetch lands in those particular sets just to help them hold value and increase hype. So if you keep going back in these two, you can see some nice little price increases here and there. Journey to Ixcot did get some of its staple reprints, or staple cards reprinted in the last two master sets. But it just seems if you check the data as a whole, Magic just seems to be on an uptick of, even look at Conspiracy going up. Both Conspiracy Take the Crown, which aren't that old of sets, have been going up in value. So where does that leave us with investment opportunities? I personally am selling into the bubble, especially into the reserve list. A lot of these cards are just too rich for my blood to be keeping. We had some Meditates we sold. I'll probably get rid of my Academy Rectors. I don't know. It just feels to me that the reserve list is just too... There should be a big announcement coming up in a few days. We don't know what that's about. Of course, speculation is people talking about the reserve list being abolished. I have a hard time. I think that they were to do it, they should follow a plan. Like I say, they should have like a class for our particular cards just so they can retain value. They should never try to really crash the prices. I don't think that a massive reprint is the way to go. However, I think that they need to address this. Otherwise, the game is just going to become unattainable for the masses. And again, it was okay for Vintage and Legacy, but I don't think it's okay when you start to bring it into the Commander. Or I mean, even Legacy at this point has just become way too expensive. If we go over to the metagame for Legacy, you can see the average deck value of a Legacy deck is now $4,000. A year ago, I believe, it was $3,000. If we even look at Modern, we have Jund decks that are over $2,000 again. It looks like the average price of the deck is sitting around the $1,000 mark for Modern, which I don't think is where they want the format to be. So I'm thinking that 2018 they're going to have to address it. It's really weird because we had 2 master sets that were just absolutely hated. People they were not received well. They didn't have enough value in them. People did not like the price range. But last time that this happened with the big influx of the singles market, it seemed like Wizards became jealous of the secondary market. And how they responded to that is then we got kind of the reprint apocalypse, where we had the 3 master sets within a rolling 12-month period. And we had a bunch of these box sets like the Explorers of Ixalan's, and now we have like Battle Bond and Jace's Spellbook and things like that have come out. But even those seem to be retaining their value, which I was even looking at Explorers of Ixalan. There's some pretty decent cards in that box set. So if you can actually pick those up at a fairly cheap price, you can easily make your money back in the singles market. So I have a lot of hypothesis of what happened. I think we had an increase in player base plus a really, really slow 2017, which killed a lot of vendors. I know that in my Utah area, especially the Salt Lake area, we had a lot of massive stores close just because they couldn't make ends meet. One, it was oversaturated with too many vendors. And 2, we had a decrease in the attendance for local game stores, especially. 2017 was a rough year for a lot of the big box stores competing and killing the local game store. And, well, it looks like it didn't really do anything to kill Magic because we've had a massive... so maybe Wizards knew what was going on all along and knew that they just didn't need the game stores. However, I'd like to see some changes for the player base again being attracted back into the game store for a healthy environment there, because last time we saw like these big influxes during Return to Ravnica, they weren't able to hold the player base or retain the player base for as long as they thought they would. It plateaued and then started decreasing quite quickly. So let's hope this is another fad. Let's hope that prices continue to increase and the player base continues to increase. So another thing is showing, look at this card. I knew I should have pulled the trigger on Earthshaker Kenra. So I always thought, okay, what is going to be the effect of the challenger decks? And I thought it was too little too late to really affect the marketplace. So I was going to go all in on Earthshaker Kenra. And then I got cold feet, thinking that, okay, yeah, some people would buy them, but it wouldn't be enough for the mass vendors trying to get out of them. So the prices would stabilize off of Earthshaker Kenra, but it wouldn't increase. However, if you see this, the Earthshaker Kenra has gone up from $1.50 all the way to $4.60. It doesn't seem to be slowing down. It's Ramming Up Red or just Red, because Ramming Up banned. Kind of red deck wins is still the go-to deck in Standard. It's really easy to get into with the Challenger deck, and the Earthshaker Kenra is neat as a 4 of. But if you can see, a lot of cards like the Soulscar Mage have also increased, and I believe this is included in both of the Challenger decks. So again, this is unheard of, except for the fact that the player base must be increasing. So there are a lot of other things that we can get ahead of the increase of value. So right now, if I was to invest in cards, if you had some free capital or just wanted to start moving your trade, you need to get out of, in my opinion, a lot of the more hyped up Dominaria cards, like the Karns, and all the rotating cards from the Standard. You'll thank yourself later, because now we are approaching just a few months until rotation, and these prices will inevitably crash. And then start getting into things that are not really looked at the moment. And this is where I'm going to talk again about pauper. This is the time I like to invest. You don't want to invest in the hype. So if you look at the pauper, it is a very, very flat market. And how you can kind of tell like what market is flat is if the losers and winners are even. And you can see on the bottom end, there's a 3-cent winner on the daily, a 3-cent loser, a 69-cent winner on the winners, and a 18-cent loser. Mole Drifter was the winner the other day. Now this is typical for Pauper at the moment. It is very, very level with a lot of the Pauper staples. We saw a huge increase here from Rivals, and then another nice little increase up to Dominaria with Pauper cards from the kind of the Pauper hype. And now we've seen these particular cards really flatline out. You can see this with Crypt Rat. That's a very good graph with the Crypt Rat. It's actually slightly gone down from its peak and is stabilized off as two things happened. All of the vendors started noticing Pauper and refilled. They were very aggressive on their buy list and refilled their Pauper cards. And B, it led to a lot of people starting to look through their bulk for these cards that are now $1 or $2, which actually was worthwhile to pick them out and actually even sell them as sets on eBay. At least you break even or make a few bucks here and there, or to buy list them to those more aggressive buy lists. So it's going to take a while to outstretch Pauper before the demand starts increasing. So this gives you the ability to buy cheap cards in Pauper for people that are like, I'm done with Pauper. They pick through these and they're not going up anymore. So you got to kind of capitalize on the investors that don't have the patience to wait, or are looking at these standard cards or these modern cards or even these reserves cards, salivating at the profits that are being made right now and trying to move all of their capital that they have tied up in Pauper cards or Commander cards and switch them over to those more hyped formats at the moment. And so right now should be a good time to get in for the deals. So what I'm looking at right now, so one of the things that I did is I've been buying even cards like Augur of Bolas because things in Magic go in waves. If we are having a huge influx of players into the standard metagame, then eventually standard will get, what ends up happening inevitably as a local game store owner, I know this firsthand. You get a lot of new players hyped up. They'll build a crappy standard deck and then get wrecked at their first standard. And then they'll build another standard deck and be like, this time I'm gonna upgrade it. I'm gonna actually build something to go competitive. And then they might stay for an entire standard season. But then they get to the end when it rotates, and then they get frustrated that their deck rotates. They look at Modern and said, okay, I got to go from investing, a $200 deck at, $200 to $300 deck in Standard all the way up to a $1,000 deck? Yeah, no thanks. And then they decide that they're going to look for something else. That's when I have a lot of people transition from either Standard to Commander or Standard now to Pauper. So I think that we're going to see another influx in Pauper sometime within the next calendar year. And so if you go back to kind of the price list, let's go back to the price list of Pauper cards, or you can see where these spikes occurred of a lot of these cards. So let's again click on the Scattershot Archer, for example. So we saw one of those. Most of the Pauper cards actually started going up during Oath of the Gatewatch. This was a very dead time for Modern, as well as Standard was quite stale. And then we had it went up from Oath to Shadows, and then had a stale again to about Kaladesh, and then it started going up a Kaladesh again, and then saw a huge increase here. This was just the supply catching up with the demand, or demand finally stretching, and then all the prices that were listed got sold out here, and then the next one up was here, and then it price adjusted here, and then we saw again the kind of Pauper 2.0. So this is kind of Pauper 1.0 and Pauper 2.0. And it looks about, so every year in January, it looks like is when Pauper starts to go up. We could see this again so September, new standard comes out, October, new standard comes out, then Pauper gets revisited again in January and goes up in value. We're going to have a huge Pauper tournament at Grand Prix Vegas. Channel Fireball is doing a Pauper championship that could really get some eyes. We'll have hopefully they'll do data for the tournament that have deck lists and data that actually entered in, that we can start getting some more data, which will then cause some price increase on the decks that did well. And I think that Pauper I don't think is stale or stagnant at the moment. I really think that people are just excited about Standard. But as is, Standard usually gets solved pretty quickly, and then people get frustrated. It hasn't had the most in-depth play in the past 3-4 years. There have been a lot of cards that have gone unanswered. Cards like Scarab God or Approach the Second Sons have been very unfun to play against, and they've led to people having a bad taste in their mouth for Standard. Now, of course, people are wanting to play their Teferis, their Lyras, their Karns. So right now it's a fresh new little format. It's got Arena kind of hinging on its back here, where people are like, hey, I wonder if my Arena deck will do good in Standard. I've actually seen a lot of those people even show up at my store with decks they built on Arena, and then try to find little upgrade pieces here from Kaladesh to try to spice up their deck a little bit. Standard Showdown this week took my Catcher's Monument and threw that I've been playing Arena, and threw Angel Inventions in it and went 4-0 with the deck, for example. So I know that people actually do follow suit with that sort of mindset. So I think that, again, you don't want to be investing in cards that are hyped at the moment. The deals are hard to come by. You're competing with other people that have the same mindset. So if you're looking at reserve list cards, you're looking at modern cards, you're looking at Dominaria cards, I think that the deals aren't there. I'd be looking for cards for pauper. I just bought, I think it was like 50 Augur of Boluses for 10 cents a piece. And this is a card that I think is inevitably going to be outstretched because the supply is a little bit confusing here. It's not quite a common, because it was a common out of Modern Masters 2017 and a common out of Commander 13. However, it was an uncommon in Magic 2013. So it's the rarity of this card. It has been reprinted, so there's a ding against it, but it was not as high as you'd expect with the double reprints of Commander and Modern Masters 2017. And then Core Set 13 is still lower than a block set usually is opened. So I think this is a good trajectory for the Augur of Bolus, going up from 20 cents to 40 cents from Rivals Ixalan to Dominaria. And finding these at 10 cents I think is great. Again, you have to find an outlet for them. I'm not suggesting you pick these up and then try to sell them on eBay or TCG Player. You'll get killed by the fees. You want to wait and find until you find a pauper player, or you find a buy list that will give a... See, look at this. Card Kingdom already pays 28 cents for them. I found them for 10 cents a pop. You can just buy list them right to Card Kingdom. And this one, they're doing only 7 cents for the Modern Mass. I guess it was this edition that I actually bought. But I'm sure that once they run out of their inventory, it seems like they have plenty at the moment, but once they run out of this inventory, they'll do a restock and actually add up their buy list. And this is something, of course, with pauper cards, you should not be ignoring, is these bigger vendors' buy lists, as they can be very, very lucrative if you can get in on them for very cheap. And I always seem to get these for lower than you can actually even buy list them on Card Kingdom, on CardSphere from people. So keep that in mind. The other one, of course, is still look at, we have a Commander set coming out. So right now, if you sell your Dominaria cards that are overhyped, your Karns, if you're not using them in the deck, your Lyras, your Teferis, they're gonna have to go down. This is unsustainable. Wizards is not going to be like, we're not going to print Dominaria like crazy because people want it. They're not gonna take like the route of not overprinting stuff. We're also got to keep in mind Standard Showdown packs are starting to enter into the market, which do have a ton of cards from like rares from Dominaria that are going to add to the supply. This has to go down. So what I'd be doing right now is trying to stay ahead of the Commander spoilers for August, and even look at Battle Bond cards that come out for that, and even the interact with the commanders that are being printed in Commander 2018. Get on those, have some equity freed up, and get on those as quickly as possible, because that is where the next spikes are going to become. Or a format like pauper, which is on the downturn at the moment, is starting to on its little plateau and downward slide for a price readjustment due to the restock and just people not being as interested in pauper. I think that we're going to have a resurgence in that format once people get sick of the price that it costs for modern. They'll build their one modern deck, but who's going to build 2 or 3 decks at $1,000 a pop when they can have a plenty in pauper? The vast majority of people that I introduced to pauper even think that the format is very, very deep as far as gameplay is concerned. I couldn't agree more. I was a pauper convert. At first, I couldn't stand the format. I want to play with rares. I want to play the things that do big effects. And then I started playing pauper, and it was just a really, really intricate way of playing kind of back and forth cat and mouse of resource management magic. And it felt like, I don't know, it really felt like skill was put to the test in pauper. So I've definitely become a convert to the format. And it doesn't hurt that it's a very, very cheap format to get into, even with the latest spike. So I'm thinking there will be another one, and this next surge of pauper cards will even be greater, or a surge of people into pauper will increase the value of pauper even greater than the last time around. However, pauper cards are all eligible for reprints, so keep that in mind. Yeah. So I guess in conclusion, that's kind of where I'm at with the marketplace. This is a really crazy time for Magic. Another advice that I have for you is usually your Facebook. Everyone's local Facebook has a classifieds, I would get. We have one in every little teeny tiny town in Utah has one that's called, like, we have one called Richfield Yard Sale. And you'd be surprised if you just post on your yard sale of like looking for Magic cards. You have any of your old kids' Magic cards still stowed away? A lot of these reserve list cards, like anything from even the Stronghold period, the Onslaught period, all of those, the Exodus period, those aren't that rare. That was still when Magic was, had fairly large print runs. And so those are the cards that are just gaining dust in people's closets. It's hard to find legends. It's hard to find the Dark and Before that are just been, people were just, in someone's closet tucked away somewhere. Magic was not very popular then. It was, like I said, it was even hard and very unknown to even find those scenarios when I started in 95 and those sets were only a couple years old. However, I know tons of peers that used to play that I guarantee their cards are just rotting in their closet. So that's a good thing to do, is just ask around, say, hey, anyone know if they have any Magic cards you're not using? I'll pay, whatever your rate is, $5 per thousand, or you'll go through it and pay them 25% of the value of the cards, or however it is. And that's the best way to find these really expensive reserve list cards, rather than flat out investing in it at the moment. I think that ship has sailed. You might see huge increases again. I mean, man, if people would have told me to invest in Academy Rectors at $30, I would have told them to get bent. I mean, it was I didn't see it going up even that further. So we don't even know how strong the marketplace is for that, but it's just really unsettling, very risky in my mind for cards like that. That just one little snap of the fingers, the reserve list could be completely gone. Again, a lot of people are thinking they could be open up for lawsuits, but maybe the money that they could make in the back end of, selling these box sets of reserve cards with reserve lists could make up for the lawsuits or whatever that Wizards has to pay. So anyway, last but not least, I do want to shill out another thing that I find quite fascinating. This is the signature spellbook, Jace. Right now we're matching eBay prices at about $50, giving up a little bit of a discount. We see them all over on eBay for $50. This is another box set that I'm not too impressed with, because the value of the entire thing together, I mean, maybe people just like the alternate art of it. But I mean, these have a pretty decent, our store got 30 of them, and I think we can get even more from distributors, which is a lot higher in the past that our small store has been able to get direct from Wizards from the vaults. So I'm thinking that this signature spellbook is higher than the vast majority of from the vaults, and the value just isn't there yet. It still holds a massive $50 price tag. To me, that shows just an insane increase in people in Magic and willing to spend for these supplemental products. So we do have them over at Rogue Deck Builder. If you feel like giving the Market Monday a tip, this is a good way you can, and even save money from eBay. We will ship it. We can't ship it international. I can't ship it international if I open up the I have to open up everything. There can't be anything sealed in the box, and that's the way we can actually ship it international. So the problem is international shipping gets very, very expensive depending on where you're at. So keep that in mind. If you're in Canada, though, we can work something out if you don't care if your box is actually technically opened. However, again, we have it for 46. We're going to try to put up Dominaria booster boxes for matching eBay prices. We're going to try to match eBay on everything. So because if we can get around not paying fees on eBay, that's where it becomes very profitable for us. The problem with stores like us that work on a very, very small level, the starting out eBay fees are just murder. 11.5 plus PayPal fee plus it gets very, very tough to compete with like the Sports and Mores and all these other big box that sell on eBay. And the same thing with TCG Player. TCG Player is just a joke at this point to try to sell. So if you do appreciate these videos and don't have a local game store, your local game store doesn't have any left for you, we'd appreciate the sales here. And if you have anything you actually do want, you can always send me an email and we can figure it out. If you're a patron, by the way, definitely use your patron discount for these particular things. We have other things in our store that we can get. So one of the things that I am kicking myself, the store has been kind of secondary. Never really been that serious with trying to unload our entire allotment from Wizards. There have been many times we haven't even purchased all that we can purchase, and I want that to change in the future. So we're going to try to adjust prices so where it's still profitable for us, but also be able to scratch our fans' backs and be able to give back to the community at really cheap price, because who wants to pay more for Magic when it's already going insanely expensive? One point in time, I think the cheapest box on Dominaria on eBay is $115, which is just absolutely insanity for a sealed booster box in this day and age. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope there's something that you got from it. Kind of a long, rambly video, but Magic, weird place at the moment. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.